Imagine journeying through a kaleidoscope of music, where each city comes alive with unique sounds crafted by legendary musicians. In Haight-Ashbury, you find Jefferson Airplane and the Grateful Dead creating experimental, hypnotic rhythms, haunting melodies, and an almost surreal atmosphere, while Janis Joplin's raw, soul-bearing voice echoes through venues like the Fillmore, drawing crowds into a collective trance. Meanwhile, in Laurel Canyon, artists like The Doors, Love, and The Byrds are blending folk and rock with lyrics that explore existentialism and freedom, filling the canyon with otherworldly sounds that drift over the hills. Across the country, in New York City, the Velvet Underground are crafting a darker, avant-garde take on psychedelia in the heart of Manhattan, blending art and music in Andy Warhol's factory, while experimentation has no limits. Across the Atlantic, London is buzzing with the British flavour of psychedelia, where Pink Floyd are performing mind-bending sets at the UFO Club, and the Beatles are transforming studio experimentation into iconic tracks at Abbey Road Studios. Each region is a patchwork of its own style of psychedelia, crafting a kaleidoscopic tapestry that defines a generation's exploration of sound, consciousness, and freedom. From coast to coast and across the pond, the psychedelic scene is one groundbreaking song after another, drawing listeners into a world of limitless musical possibilities. It may sound like a psychedelic dream, but it's actually just another day in 1967.
8 miles high.
The scene's emphasis on peace, love, and togetherness reflected an idealistic vision of a harmonious society unbound by conformity. But as time goes on, the dark side of humanity begins to creep in. This movement, rooted in liberation, takes a dark turn no one saw coming. We're going to take a journey through the music and events that shaped the late 1960s psychedelic music scene and try to understand what led to its decline. What can be learned through an empathetic lens, and why it dissolved into chaos and disillusionment and ended the psychedelic music scene altogether.
That means everybody just cool out!
Now listen while I play my green tambourine.
Why is it that in idealistic pursuits we often overlook the reality that humans are inherently flawed and society is only as pure as the people within it? Starry-eye visions, as fleeting as water held in our hands. The tighter we hold, the faster they slip away. As artists and fans alike searched for connection and escape, did they blur the line between enlightenment and indulgence?
I just dropped in to see what condition my condition was.
But alternatively, this was an escape from conformity. This music wasn't just about sound, it reflected a lifestyle shift, embracing a sonic landscape where listeners could envision a world beyond suburban boundaries, rejecting the materialism and security that the post-Depression era had come to value. The basic framework for survival exists, but it doesn't provide everything, as we are not perfect robots. Instead, life leaves room for us to dream, interpret, and imagine beyond day-to-day realities.
Rows of houses that are all the same, and no for miles and miles.
Before you slip into unconsciousness.
Our perception of reality is shaped by our thoughts, creativity, and imagination, allowing us to find deeper meaning, possibility, and beauty within the ordinary world, manifesting into music, art, and books that warp that reality, providing a portal into ourselves and how we interpret and fit into the world around us. Psychedelic music did more than just entertain. It became a rallying point for the countercultural movement, challenging societal norms, promoting peace, and questioning authority. Through its association with the anti-war movement and alternative lifestyles, psychedelic music became a powerful voice for change, inspiring people to imagine a new world.
To the other side, we're gonna do to the other side, yeah.
Take me on a trip upon your magic swirling ship.
In 1965, Bob Dylan's line from Mr. Tambourine Man, "Take me on a trip upon your magic swirling ship," filled listeners' imagination with psychedelic imagery, provoking a surreal approach to music lyrics that had rarely been explored. Lines like "To dance beneath the diamond sky with one hand waving free" conjure a dreamlike scene that feel both liberating and otherworldly. Dylan's lyrics invite a sense of freedom and escape, sparking a new direction for music that resonated deeply with the era's quest for self-discovery and transcendence. Around this time, the Beatles began working on Rubber Soul. The album's introspective lyrics and hints of psychedelia, reflected even in its surreal cover art, showcased a more mature approach to songwriting. Songs like Norwegian Wood introduced Eastern influences, with George Harrison's use of the sitar adding an exotic, reflective quality to their sound, an early sign of their growing interest in expanding musical boundaries.
Nowhere man, please listen. You don't know what you're...
Who are you?
That's a good question.
Dylan, meanwhile, was challenging labels and expectations. As he distanced himself from the protest singer identity, he expanded his own sound.
You're considered by many people to be symbolic of the protest movement in the country, for the young people. Are you going to participate in the Vietnam Day Committee demonstration in front of the Fairmont Hotel tonight?
I'll be busy tonight.
He famously pushed back against labels, expressing frustration with being categorized. During a press conference in San Francisco that year, he playfully dodged questions about his role in folk music, implying that trying to pin down his identity was a limiting exercise. Dylan's free-thinking approach inspired countless artists, introducing the idea that musicians and people shouldn't feel constrained by labels or narrow definitions imposed by society.
In this room, the heat pipes just cough.
They call me Mellow Yellow, white, right, slick. They call me Mellow Yellow.
I see a red door and I want it painted black. Boy, to your passing hands.
In the mid-60s, the British freakbeat scene was evolving, inspiring musicians to explore new sounds and push boundaries. This shift brought a wave of artists into the London clubs, where they began experimenting with the elements that would define psychedelic music. Nearby neighborhoods offered affordable flats, allowing up-and-coming musicians to live and work in close proximity to the heart of the music scene. London became the incubator for bands like Pink Floyd, the Rolling Stones and the Yardbirds, who were evolving freak beats, driving rhythms with surreal, mind-bending elements, eventually defining the British psychedelic sound.
Emily tries but misunderstands.
The light fandango turns cartwheels.
At the same time, the California music scene was undergoing its own transformation, with the countercultural wave turning Los Angeles and San Francisco into epicenters of psychedelic experimentation. Haight-Ashbury became a thriving hub where bands like Jefferson Airplane, The Grateful Dead, and Big Brother and the Holding Company fused rock, folk, and blues with hypnotic, mind-expanding sounds that captivated crowds at the Fillmore and Avalon Ballroom.
Faces look ugly when you're alone.
Down in Los Angeles, Laurel Canyon's creative community was buzzing as artists like The Doors, Love, and The Byrds started weaving poetic lyrics into their music, blurring the lines between reality and dreamlike soundscapes. With the Sunset Strip's clubs just a short drive away, musicians had endless opportunities to perform, collaborate, and shape the distinctly Californian psychedelic sound that would define a generation.
People astray.
It's this questioning of reality and oneself in relation to the world around itself that emerges more and more psychedelic music, pushing boundaries and developing sounds never heard before.
Said it's alright, I won't forget.
I think it's time we stop, children.
What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
He lives on Love Street. Yeah.
Fashion evolves, and a new culture of creativity takes the world by storm. Of course, it's impossible to discuss psychedelic music without acknowledging the era's fascination with altered states of perception that accompanied it. The CIA's MKUltra program, a covert mind control project and experimentation, some of which were funded at universities, had a significant but often hidden influence on the chaos of the 1960s. These mind-altering practices quickly spread among intellectuals and became widely popularized within the counterculture, many of whom saw it as a path to enlightenment. The pursuit of altered states of consciousness, whether through music, meditation, or other means, became central to the counterculture, symbolizing a search for awareness beyond conventional means. Music underwent a radical transformation from the early 1960s to the psychedelic era, evolving in both sound and subject matter. Perhaps the most iconic example of this transformation is the Beatles. May 1967 saw the release of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. This album was groundbreaking, blending experimental sounds and studio techniques that redefined what rock music could be. It was celebrated for its artistic innovation and became a cultural milestone symbolizing the spirit of the psychedelic movement.
Well, I just had to laugh. A girl with kaleidoscope eyes.
While singles dominated the early 60s, psychedelic artists emphasized the album format, creating cohesive concepts. In-depth experiences that flowed from start to finish. Albums like Sgt. Pepper and the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds encouraged listeners to experience the music as a journey rather than a collection of songs. As psychedelia merged with the counterculture, artists began addressing broader societal issues and inner journeys.
She comes in color, combs her hair. She's like a
New visual aesthetics were influencing the sound. Psychedelic music was closely tied to visual art, with bands using vibrant colors, surreal album covers, and light shows during performances. Bands like Pink Floyd and the Grateful Dead often performed with elaborate light shows, which included swirling, colorful projections and strobe effects. These visuals created an immersive environment that mirrored the surreal, expansive nature of the music.
shiny, shiny, shiny boots of leather.
Art Nouveau and Surrealism inspired psychedelic aesthetics with flowing, organic shapes and dreamlike imagery. Psychedelic music broke down genre boundaries, blending rock, folk, blues, jazz, and even classical elements into something entirely new. Monterey Pop Festival was a 3-day music festival held June 16th to 18th in 1967 in Monterey, California. The festival is remembered for the first major American appearances by the psychedelic music legends such as Jimi Hendrix and the first large-scale public performance of Janis Joplin. It celebrated music, peace, and unity, marking a turning point for the counterculture and establishing the rock festival as a platform for musical and social expression.
Sitting down by my window.
No more will my gray seagull turn a deeper blue, blue, blue.
Once upon a time, you dressed so fine. Through the bumps of diamond in your prime.
The Summer of Love saw thousands of young people converge in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district, celebrating peace, love, and music. Initially, it fostered a sense of community and idealism, with psychedelic music serving as the soundtrack to this transformative cultural moment. However, the feeling of love and peace did not last, as before long the situation morphed into dirty dwellings with runaways, and San Francisco's dark side becoming apparent on the unexpected who came naively looking for the answer to life's burning question of meaning, only to find dark aspects of society.
What's going to happen this summer in San Francisco?
Well, I couldn't even begin to tell you in about an hour or so, but there are going to be a lot of people there. And
how many would you guess are going to congregate?
Somebody said 100,000, but I don't know whether this is correct or not.
The establishment's going to get a little stirred up over that.
Don't you need somebody to love? Wouldn't you love somebody?
Then, in 1967, more cracks began to show in the music scene. Pink Floyd's first tour of the United States was in 1967 to support their debut album, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. The tour started in New York and was cancelled partway through due to the increasingly erratic and withdrawn behavior of co-founder and writer Syd Barrett. This was a vast departure from his former outgoing, confident self when he joined the band. Nick Mason said about Barrett, In a period when everyone was being cool in a very adolescent, self-conscious way, Sid was unfashionably outgoing. My enduring memory of our first encounter is the fact that he bothered to come up and introduce himself to me. During a performance on American Bandstand, Barrett stared blankly into space and barely sang Apples and Oranges. On the Pat Boone Show, Barrett sat silently and refused to mime See Emily Play. After the December 22nd show, they cancelled the tour. Soon after their return, they supported Jimi Hendrix during a tour of England. However, Barrett's condition worsened. In a heartbreaking ending, David Gilmour was brought in to help Barrett during live shows, and in March 1968, Sid departed the band. The enlightenment they sought through mind-altering had an unexpected dark side.
Sid was just the most wonderful, open, flamboyant guy, and clearly we're all hoping he'd get better, and all desperately trying as hard as possible to keep him in the bank. We all loved him.
I know about Sandy hasn't got a house, I don't know why I call him Gerald.
1968 saw the release of Electric Ladyland by the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Hendrix's third album pushed the boundaries of rock and psychedelia, blending soulful guitar work with innovative studio effects. Songs like Voodoo Child and All Along the Watchtower became iconic, and the album was celebrated as a masterpiece that showcased Hendrix's genius and expanded the possibilities of psychedelic music. As 1968 moved into 1969, the idea spread that mind-expanding means were seen as a gateway to higher consciousness and expanded perceptions. Prominent figures like Timothy Leary discussed it, believing it could free people from societal constraints. However, not everyone responded positively, leading to an increase in perilous incidents. July 3rd, 1969. The death of Brian Jones in England. The Rolling Stones founder Brian Jones was found dead in his swimming pool under mysterious circumstances. His passing signified the heavy toll the lifestyle was taking on the music world.
The name on you when you change with every new to meet you. Hope you guess my name. Oh yeah.
But the biggest event of the decade was about to take place. From August 15th to the 18th, 1969, the Woodstock Music Festival became the ultimate symbol of peace and love, drawing nearly 500,000 people to a farm in New York for 3 days of music, community, and celebration. It showcased the peak of the counterculture's influence and spirit of harmony, even as societal and political tensions were mounting around it.
Traveling the train through clear Moroccan skies, ducks and pigs and chickens call.
Oh, Susie girl. Oh, Susie.
Soon, the initial summer of love optimism began to fade. People began to question the idealistic vision. People coming to hate Ashbury in busloads soon discovered homelessness and a lack of resources. Economic and day-to-day realities clashed with the movement's idealism, creating a growing disillusionment.
Why would us every single little tiny little everything hold on.
Soon, 1969 brought great change to how the psychedelic era was perceived. The freewheeling residents of Laurel Canyon experience fear in their tight-knit community for the first time. August 1969, news breaks about 5 young people a half-mile from Laurel Canyon. The Byrds' producer, Terry Melcher, is believed to be the target, as Charles Manson had once been there when Melcher was considering him for a record contract, but then later rejected him. Many Laurel Canyon musicians had been to the house for parties on several occasions. Just one day later, it is the same story with 2 more people in another nearby Los Angeles neighborhood, Benedict Canyon. This changed the vibe in Laurel Canyon and scared everyone. They locked their doors for the first time and became suspicious of strangers. People began to move away.
Just keep cool and let's just relax. Let's just get into a groove. Come on, we can get it together. Come on.
December 6, 1969, Altamont Free Concert in Northern California was intended to be the West Coast Woodstock. It was anything but. The Rolling Stones and the Grateful Dead were behind the concert and naively hired the Hells Angels as security. The scene became ugly.
Sisters, brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters.
The concert ended in disaster and the Grateful Dead refused to play. Rolling Stone reported, "That's the way things went at Altamont, so badly that the Grateful Dead, the prime organizers and movers of the festival, didn't even get to play." That was the day the 60s died.
Come on now. That means everybody just cool out. How are we doing over there? Is there anyone there that's hurt, huh?
The Manson horrors near Laurel Canyon in August had put an end to the open-door free love policy that had allowed the magical intermingling of the 60s. Altamont nailed the door shut. Soon it was heartbreak after heartbreak. On September 18, 1970, the death of Jimi Hendrix at age 27 left the world stunned. Just a few weeks later, on October 4, 1970, the death of Janis Joplin. Like Hendrix, her death at 27 shocked everyone, marking the cost of the decade's lifestyle and underscoring the vulnerability of the artists who had helped define it. Then, less than 1 year later, Jim Morrison would suffer the same fate at age 27. This outcome had become far too common, and the music world was finally getting the wake-up call. The 1970s would be ushered in with a range of harder to the more reflective, melancholy music as the psychedelic music scene faded away. In idealistic pursuits, we often ignore the reality that every movement is only as pure as the people within it. What started as liberation became a mirror, reflecting human complexity, an exploration of self that was bound to reveal our own shadows. In the psychedelic music scene, where new sounds pushed boundaries, the quest for escapism from societal norms often veered into chaos. They searched for both connection and escape, blurring the line between enlightenment and indulgence. But this tendency towards indulgence and escapism ultimately led to realities of human nature. As we look back, Can the ideals of the psychedelic era still offer insights into how we approach creativity and connection in an increasingly isolated, consumer-focused world? Can a structured society truly nurture creative freedom? Or does creativity thrive best on the edges of convention?
And one pill makes you small, and the ones that mother gives you.
You have a poster there, does that denote
Yes,
your...
this poster somebody gave to me. It looked pretty good. Jefferson Airplane, John Handy Quintet, and Sam Thomas, and the Mystery Trend, and the Great Society are all playing at Fillmore Auditorium Friday, December 10th, and I would like to go if I could.